Greetings, brethren of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This is Cry Aloud Messengers. I'm your presenter, Brother Stanley Zombe. Today, our presentation is based on a sermon that was preached by Dr. Conrad Vine. Dr. Conrad Vine exposes the deceptions and the lies of the General Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So it was from the recent camp meetings. I think it was in England, where Dr. Vine was actually preaching. He actually preached about what happened 4 years back, from 2020 to 2022, where we saw the General Conference and all these conferences exposing the children of God to the poisons that were being promoted by the world. So we saw that during that time, a lot of church members died because they followed what the General Conference had put across, and many pastors that actually came in the open supporting these poisons, and preachers like Mark Finley also supported these poisons. Stephen Ball also supported these poisons, and many other preachers, and even himself, the president, Teddy Wilson, also supported these poisons. And we even saw him again crushing these points where they were raised at the conference, at the session that was also held 2 years back. So, my brothers and sisters, this is a tragedy that Dr. Conrad Vine was exposing. Let us hear him and hear what he is saying.
God's grace, he found a job as a high school teacher in an Adventist school. He purchased a home before the pandemic arrived, and he had a mortgage to pay. He was a healthy young man taking much regular exercise to live the Adventist health message. He was a healthy young man. Then the pandemic came along, and his employer, the local Adventist conference, required him to take the shots. He was strongly opposed to this on grounds of liberty of conscience and on medical grounds. He had a history of problems with vaccinations. His physician submitted a bona fide medical exemption request, but that was denied by the educational administrator's self-appointed task force. After all avenues for receiving his waiver had been exhausted, and believing he had no choice or he would lose his career and be unable to pay his mortgage and be to go homeless, this young man succumbed to the pressure and received the AstraZeneca vaccine. Shortly thereafter, he had a massive stroke with an 18mm blood clot to his brain. His neurologist and cardiologist declared it to be idiopathic, which means arising spontaneously or from an obscure or unknown cause, as he was a physically fit and able and active young man who adhered to the Adventist health message and lifestyle. Almost 2 years later, he remains at home, partially paralyzed, unable to engage in work. He has lost his income, he's lost his home. His mother has resigned her nursing job to look after him 24/7 because he now needs nursing care around the clock. The Australian Union and his local conference have turned their backs on him and his repeated requests for assistance. I've read the paperwork, I won't show it here, but essentially they've said, we've fulfilled our legal responsibilities, you're on your own. Although they did say to him that if he recovers from the impact of this stroke, of which the cause they do not know what the cause of that stroke is, they'll be happy to re-employ him as a teacher. That's good and comforting news for him. Well, remember, he took the AstraZeneca vaccine. In 2022, the AstraZeneca vaccine had already been banned in many countries around the world because it causes brain bleeds. In spring of 23, much to the young man's chagrin, the Australian government banned the AstraZeneca shots nationwide because they were determined to be linked with brain bleeds and strokes, as this man had experienced. And finally, in May 2024, AstraZeneca withdrew their vaccines worldwide after admitting in a UK court the relationship between with brain bleeds and strokes. That which was safe and effective, officially, that which was mandated by our church administrators, with calamitous effect, was then banned overnight by the Australian government precisely because it was not safe and effective. So far, the conference and the Australian Union have denied any and all responsibility for their part in this mess. The structure sails on, leaving broken bodies, destroyed lives, and betrayed trust in its wake. And nobody seems to care. But this is wrong. This is profoundly wrong. This is a human case study of what happens when church administrators overstep their boundaries and deny members the ability to follow the dictates and the conscience of the Holy Spirit. And the church, the hierarchy just moves sails on as if nothing has happened, leaving broken bodies and destroyed lives in its wake. This is what happens when our GC administrators make illegitimate decisions, overstep their defined boundaries of delegated authority, and assume the right to trample on liberty of conscience. Had that man's request for a religious exemption been honoured, he would still be working today. But his life has been destroyed by the actions of those administrators. Personally, this statement will get me into trouble. I believe that every General Conference administrator who was party to that reaffirmation statement should resign immediately because they overstep their authority with catastrophic impact on the lives of innocent Adventists worldwide. I think they should resign. They no longer have our confidence. So what are the implications? Well, it's difficult to talk about this because had the General Conference said, with hindsight, we recognise we've made a mistake, and therefore we want to recognise we made a mistake, we want to apologise, how can we make this better, and let's make sure we don't make these kind of mistakes again. What has actually happened is the General Conference issued a statement defending their right to make such statements. We discussed that last night. And they have basically cancelled any and all possibility of any discussion about their authority to make that statement. After my appeal to Adventist Nobility sermon in January 2022, the GC issued a global condemnation in Adventist News Network of any who would question their authority. To prevent any discussion at the 2022 GC session, the GC AdCom stripped me of my delegate status because they didn't want me to speak up and raise this question from the floor. When Attorney Zirkle from California, from Loma Linda, made a motion to add the vaccine statement to the GC agenda in 22, Elder Wilson squashed that motion from the front, and we saw that last night. The Liberty and Health Alliance put together a petition to the General Conference administrators. Almost 25,000 Adventist pastors, doctors, nurses, members worldwide signed that petition, and no response was ever given to that petition. When Pastor Wilson did a question and answer with members of the Granite Bay Church in February 23, over 1,100 members were present. And they were encouraged to type on their cell phones and type in a question, and Elder Wilson sat on the panel with a couple of other pastors, like Pastor James Rafferty from 3ABN and so forth. And the number one question, because people could vote for it, the number one question that was up on the screen the whole afternoon was, why did the GC issue the reaffirmation statement that hurt so many Adventists? And for the entire afternoon, the panel refused to take that question, even though it had about 1,150 votes out of the people present. Essentially, our leaders are now hiding behind their lawyers. No discussion is possible, but we need a process of forgiveness, of reconciliation and healing to begin, and that requires courage on the part of all parties. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." And it is incumbent, I believe, upon our GC leadership to recognise their role in what has happened and to make the first step to reconciliation with the members who've been hurt by their illegitimate actions. So, over the years, I believe we have morphed. We began in the 1860s identifying as God's end-time remnant movement in prophecy.
So this is what Dr. Vine had to say. I encourage you to also watch his full sermon, and you will see clearly, my brothers and sisters, that the exact words that are spoken in Ezekiel 34 are actually coming to play today in our churches. Even here in South Africa, the Northern Conference refused to also write the exemption letters for the church members. And we see that these leaders today are guilty. Their hands are full of blood. Many people died, and many people died, and still more, my brothers and sisters, are yet to die, and many lost their job because the church leaders failed to stand with their members. Hence, Ezekiel 34 speaks against the shepherds of Israel who are not feeding the flock, who are not taking care of the diseased. My brothers and sisters, the word of God is very clear. It is so sad today what's happening within our members that we keep on even supporting these greedy dogs that have got nothing to do with the flock. They are just interested in them getting their pay, but with the well-being of the members, the well-being of the churches, they don't care. They don't care, my brothers and sisters. How can you then continue to support such people who are not even following thus saith the Lord? Remember, Isaiah 8 verse 20 tells us that to the law and to the testimony. My brothers and sisters, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. Many, even Stephen Ball, Mark Finley, they started to abuse the scriptures. They started to abuse the spirit of prophecy. Claiming that taking a vaccine. Ellen White did it in her day, and it is right even today to do it. My brothers and sisters, may we wake up. This is a voice that is calling, seeking for the church to rise up and wake up and cease him from men, trusting men in the place of God. We read from the Great Controversy, page 595. It reads, Satan is constantly endeavoring to attract attention to men in the place of God. He leads the people to look to bishops, to pastors, to professors of theology as their guide instead of searching the scriptures to learn their duty for themselves. Then, by controlling the minds of these leaders, he can influence the multitudes according to his will. We also read from Testimonies for the Church, volume 5, page 14. It reads, when teachers or professors shall sacrifice religious principle to please a worldly, amusement-loving class, they should be considered unfaithful to their trust and should be discharged. My brothers and sisters, it is very clear that these preachers, Teddy Wilson, Mark Finley, Stephen Ball, Randy Skate, and many other in our conferences, they should resign, my brothers and sisters, and they shouldn't even be paid from the tithes and offerings. These people have got nothing to do with the church of God. They are just deceivers. They are just speaking idols inside the church of God. My brothers and sisters, it is a high time today that we need to put our trust in God. That's why God gave us the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. We need to study these on our own and cease from following these men. My brothers and sisters, there is a danger. A lot of people today, you wonder why they are subscribing to these people's channels. Secret Unsealed by Stephen Ball, and even many other channels, my brothers and sisters. These people, my brothers and sisters, they've got nothing to do. They have got nothing. They are not even standing on thus says the Lord. They are still doing the same thing that was done by the devil, mixing the truth with error. They are still doing what is being done by most of the Sunday keeping churches, mixing truth with error. My brothers and sisters, it is a high time that we need to wake up from sleep. We read, my brothers and sisters, from Testimonies for the Church, that is volume 5, page 217. It reads, I am filled with sadness when I think of our condition as a people. The Lord has not closed heaven to us, but our own course of continually backsliding has separated us from God. Pride, covetousness, and love of the world have lived in the heart without fear of punishment or condemnation. Grievous and presumptuous sins have dwelt among us, and yet the general opinion is that the church is flourishing and that peace and spiritual prosperity are in all her borders. The church has turned back from following Christ, her leader, and is steadily retreating towards Egypt. Yet few are alarmed and astonished at their want of spiritual power. Doubt and even disbelief of the testimonies of the Spirit of God is leavening our churches everywhere. Satan would have it thus. Ministers who preach self instead of Christ would have it thus. Testimonies are unread and unappreciated. God has spoken to you. Light has been shining from His word and from the testimonies, and both have been slighted and disregarded. The result is apparent in the lack of purity and devotion and earnest faith among us. My brothers and sisters, at the General Conference and these local conferences, they are not even coming out, my brothers and sisters, to apologize to the members of the church of what they did, of these sins, of these wicked works that they committed 4 years back. They are just sweeping it under the carpet, my brothers and sisters. We need to wake up, my brothers and sisters. They are the ones who are leading, who are in the forefront of leading the church to reject the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. That's why today there is lack of purity and devotion and earnest faith among us. And we are being told that the church has actually stopped following Christ. The church has turned back from following Christ, her leader, and is steadily retreating toward Egypt. This is you actually see this from how the General Conference is leading. You see how even these conferences are leading. My brothers and sisters, there are still more problems ahead. If they did it in 2020 to 2022, they are yet still to do it again. My brothers and sisters, they are still yet to lead many souls to perish, because these vaccines, these vaccinations are still yet to come. My brothers and sisters, it is a high time that we need to wake up and cease from trusting and following these men. The church today deceived by its own leaders. We read from Matthew 27 verses 20 to 23 and 62 to 63. It reads, but the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor answered and said unto them, whether of the twine will ye that I release unto you? They said, Barabbas. Pilate said unto them, what shall I do then with Jesus, which is called Christ? They all say unto him, let him be crucified. And the governor said, why? What evil hath he done? But they cried out the more, saying, let him be crucified. Now the next day that followed, the day of preparation, the chief priest, the Pharisees came together unto Pilate, saying, say, we remember that that deceiver said, while he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise again. So here, my brothers and sisters, we see that the chief priest and the elders, who are our pastors and our theologians today, they are the ones who persuaded, who encouraged people to take these poisons into their bodies. The same mistake that was done by the leaders of the Jewish church, the General Conference of today is repeating those mistakes, those sins, by persuading the people to take these poisons. My brothers and sisters, when are we going to wake up? The time, my brothers, has come. If we do not wake up now, we will sleep forever. We are in danger of putting our trust in these men, if following our leaders. The leaders of yesterday are the ones who killed Christ. So it is today, my brothers and sisters, that these church leaders are the ones that are leading many of our members to perdition by following the principles of the word, by rejecting the present truth of today, by rejecting the health messages of today. It is a high time, my brothers and sisters, that we need to wake up and cease from trusting in men. Conclusion of the matter. We see that Satan is today using the pastors, the elders, and the theologians to deceive the church. Satan leads the people to look to bishops, to pastors, to professors of theology as their guides, instead of searching the scriptures to learn their duty. We also saw that God works through those who hear and obey his voice, those who will, if need be, speak unpalatable truths, those who do not fear to reprove popular sins. The reason why he does not often choose men of learning and high position to lead out in reform movements is that they trust to their creeds, theories, and theoretical systems, and feel no need to be taught of God. My brothers and sisters, for more information, you can contact the admins at Cry Aloud Messengers. Our phone numbers are on the screen, and our email address, cryaloudmessengers@gmail.com. My brothers and sisters, it is a high time that we need to awake from sleep and cease from putting our trust in men. God bless.